So I'm missing baseball, and I'm watching highlights, and I'm watching spring training highlights from 2020, and I rewatched Deivi Garcia's start. Deivi Garcia, in case you don't know, is the Yankees' top pitching prospect. Well, he might be number 2. You know, some people think Clark Schmidt is a little better, but I'm a big Deivi Garcia fan. And he gets compared to a young Pedro Martinez, so I started watching Pedro highlights, and I wanted to kind of break down if Pedro is really the right comparison. And there are some similarities there. They're both short. Pedro Martinez was listed at 5'11". I don't know if he was every bit of 5'11". Deivi Garcia is listed at 5'9". I think that's pretty representative of his actual height. But generally, pitchers are much taller, right? Jordan Montgomery is 6'6". Clark Schmidt is 6'1". Garrett Cole is 6'4". Luis Severino is 6'2". Domingo Germán, 6'2". James Paxton, 6'4". Deivi Garcia is obviously shorter than all those guys, so he needs to generate more arm speed to throw as hard as those guys because he's got less mass. That's just basic physics. Force equals mass times acceleration. Now, obviously, if he has less mass, then he needs to accelerate faster. That's why his arm is like a whip. He's got a very whip-like action. Now, Pedro had a bit of a whip-like action too, and you can tell from his follow-through how he kind of twists on his front foot and spins around like a cork. That's from having a whip-like action, but he's more three-quarters. I think there's a better comparison. Yordando Ventura. So you can learn a lot about a pitcher's technique and throwing and the way they deliver the ball by watching the way they finish. Now, if you look at Jabba Chamberlain here in this McFarlane statuette, the pose that he's in is called getting into the saddle. It's meant to signify that you're balanced on your left leg for a right-handed pitcher and just kind of simply stepping over a horse to get into the saddle. You're basically balanced on that left leg. Some guys you'll see will fall off towards first base, and I'm talking in terms of right-handed pitchers now. Some guys will fall off towards first base, but other guys will kind of reflexively go backwards almost towards second base because they're throwing in kind of an over-top linear motion like Yordando Ventura and Deivi Garcia both do. Now, Yordando Ventura, rest in peace, threw a bit harder than Deivi Garcia. Deivi throws 95, 96. I've seen a few 97s and 98s. Yordando was 98 to 101 before he got killed. So I don't think Deivi Garcia really, has the stuff that Yordando does, but he's a very similar type of pitcher in the way that he whips his arm, downwards, right behind his hip. He has a nice turn in his front side, and then he whips it directly over the top. So I went back and looked at a few other short guys in Major League history who threw hard, guys like Roy Oswalt, to see where he gets his power from. Tim Lincecum. There's a ton of ways to generate velocity. It looked like Roy Oswalt to me. Most of his velocity comes from the kinetic energy in his windup and in his motion. So he's got a very, very big stride. So he strides way down the mound. And then guys like Tim Lincecum, he's got kind of a similar whip-like motion to Deivi Garcia. He could be a fair comparison, but again, these guys threw harder than Deivi. But when doing a comparison, you've got to compare apples to apples. And, the way that I compare Deivi Garcia is to other short right-handers who throw over the top and who throw hard, of which Yordando Ventura, and he was a little bit taller than Deivi Garcia, to be fair, and Roy Oswalt, and Pedro Martinez and Tim Lincecum, they're the main guys you can compare. And Deivi's a little bit unique. I think the guy who he's most similar to is Yordando Ventura, but, to say he could be Pedro Martinez isn't that much of a stretch. I don't think he throws quite as hard as Pedro, but again, he's only 20 years old. He's still got time.